Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Endurance Insights with myself, Coach Mark Cullen. I hop on here every weekend, talk about a bunch of different topics that I'm passionate about or seeing bouncing around the interweb or that my athletes are struggling with, or questions that you guys submitted to me via Instagram or the comments sections of these podcasts or YouTube videos. So I always appreciate if you toss a like or subscribe. That helps me get the word out there and keep giving out this free content for you guys. So today I'm going to talk about a couple of different topics. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I'm doing in my training leading up to Eugene Marathon, which is April 24th, I believe. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about super shoes and shoe rotations. And then last one I'm going to talk about is some of my favorite marathon prep long runs. And I might just loop that a little bit into my Eugene Marathon prep. So maybe first one to talk about, let's talk about shoes and shoe rotations, and should you buy super shoes? So first of all, shoe technology is incredible these days. That PEBA foam that's in the shoes is really responsive and one of the best parts of it. A lot of people talk about how the carbon plate is the thing that really propels people forward, but really it's that foam that allows the shoe to be super responsive and take a lot of the load off, and they kind of not make us not use as much of our foot and lower leg muscles. That sort of spares some of that for later in the race when our legs are starting to fatigue. So I think most people should have in their rotation ideally 3 shoes. So sort of an everyday trainer that ideally doesn't have sort of any of that really poppy sort of PEBA foam in it, no carbon plate. I'm using, for example, these days a cheaper pair of the New Balance 1080s. They are slow as molasses, but what they allow me to do is sort of work on being poppy with a slow shoe on those days and reinforce good form and not just plod along on those days. So then when I get those faster shoes on, that I can really take advantage of them. So the next sort of shoe in the rotation is what I would call like a super trainer or sort of a speed work shoe. So ones that I would use for maybe a midweek speed session. So if I'm doing 5K, 10K, half marathon, threshold work, or a long run where I have some quality work in it. So it could be anything marathon pace or a little slower or faster than marathon pace work. So I use my everyday shoes for just my easy runs. And if it's an easier long run, I'll just wear it for those because I don't care as much about hitting certain paces, and my legs aren't going to get quite as beat up from that. Where I want to hit certain paces and have my legs less beat up is where I wear those kind of super trainers. So usually they're either an older pair of race shoes, because we know a lot of these super shoes, once you get over 100, 150K, like they're not going to be the full effect you want them to be for race shoes. So that's why use those race shoes sparingly. They're friggin' expensive, and you only get so many like top end miles out of them. So once I've hit about 150K on a pair of race shoes, they become sort of those super trainers or race shoes. So some examples I'm using for those, I use the Evo SLs from Adidas. Those are a great option and super cheap online these days. They don't have a carbon plate in them. They do have some poppy foam on them, and I find them to be pretty quick. Another option is the Boston 13, again, an Adidas shoe. Has a carbon or nylon plate in it, I believe, and some more of that foam. I used that for my steady long run the other day. That was a great option. Sometimes I'll use an older pair of Alpha Flies that I have that are a great option as well. And then in the past, I've used things like the Nike Tempo was always a great option, or the Endorphin Speeds from Saucony, or the Asics Magic Speeds are another good option. So every single lineup, there's some great accounts on Instagram. Just search up running shoes and you'll be able to like compare the lineups of the everyday shoe, the sort of what they call like tempo or super trainer, and then sort of the race shoe from there. And then the third option is obviously race shoes. I save those if it's a newer pair. Maybe I'll run sort of one workout in them leading up to my race. It might be about 2 weeks out where maybe I have 8 to 10K of quality work. I'll do my warm up in my slower shoes, put the race shoes on for quality, just make sure I'm wearing my like race socks so I know if there's going to be any chafing points, how I want to perfectly tie them so I have no hot spots and that I'm not pinching sort of the top of my foot, things like that. And then I just want to go through like a little bit of stuff around race pace so that I know kind of what rhythm, what's my optimal sort of cadence in that, and what my foot strike's going to be like, because every one of these shoes hits a little different. And I get a lot of questions on people, should I use super shoes? Am I fast enough to use super shoes? So a lot of the science shows that people are different responders to super shoes. So even like somebody like myself who's running like a 2:45 marathon, there could be another 2:45 marathoner. And based on the way we stride in terms of maybe someone's a little longer, lopier stride, one's more of a cadence runner, we could both respond a different percentage to those super shoes. So that's always interesting. For most people, it's like in the 2 to 5% range versus those like everyday trainers. And what they find is like the faster you are, the more sort of benefit you get on that sort of percentage scale. So those people running like 2:10 marathons are getting a lot of benefit from those super shoes, where somebody who's maybe running more like 5-minute pace, like a 3:30 marathon, or 8-minute mile pace might not get quite as much of a response from that. But I do think if you're somebody who's running, call it like 5:15 per K, 8:30 per mile or faster for your races, like go get some super shoes. There's just something about putting those shoes on that you take yourself to a different mental state too, where you're like, all right, game on. Like I'm coming here. I'm going to make friends with the pain that is going to be at the end of this race. I'm bringing my best effort to this. I tapered into this. I've earned the right to go out there and push myself on this. So I think there's something psychological about putting on those super shoes, and the foam just takes the load off. The carbon plate does allow a little stiffness in return for you. So I think if you're running 5:15 or faster, it's when you start to get to probably like 6 minutes a K and it's a little bit more of a shuffly form you're doing there. You're probably not going to get the same pop from a super shoe. That's more of like a 9-10 minute mile. You're probably not getting quite as much benefit from it. You might only get a half or 1%. But hey, if you can afford them and you're finding that they're not too squishy and you're not like losing momentum because of them, because if you think this like PIBA foam is super fast and responsive, that it responds to somebody going faster and a faster cadence rate, that yeah, it's just you're gonna get more benefit. And if somebody's going slower, they're just gonna kind of sink into those shoes. So but again, the psychological side, if it allows you to perform your best, freaking wear them, try them out, go to a running store and try them out on a treadmill before buying them. So that's always a nice option to do in there. Second piece I want to talk about is some of my favorite marathon prep long runs. So at the current time, I'm about 11 weeks out from Eugene Marathon. I've had a great month of training, maybe my best month of run training I've had in a while. Really helps being in Vancouver this year. Most of our days are above freezing, so like 3 to 12 degrees and a little bit rainy, but like you still have footing and you're not wearing tons of layers. So I've been able to hit good quality long runs, and we have great trails too that are good year round for my Kenyan easy runs that I talked about last week, or Ethiopian easy runs that I talked about on last week's episode. So it's just allowed me to be super consistent. I think my last 4 weeks have been like 80K, 90K, 100K, and then 106K this past week. And I've sort of moved from what I call this sort of base phase into what I call the sort of marathon support phase. So during this phase, I'm doing a lot of that sort of threshold work during the week. Still touching up on strides and short hills all the time. I'm finding that is really helping my run economy. Doing a lot of hillier easy runs, and then my long runs have been a little bit more work, like either just above or below marathon pace, so a little bit faster or a little bit slower than marathon pace. So this past weekend I did a 31K long run, 5K warm up, 21K steady. So that was about, my target was like 15 to 25 seconds per kilometer, slower than my marathon pace. So I ended up doing about 4:17 per K, which I was really happy about. Wasn't looking at the watch, was just going off of effort. These steady runs are awesome because you can run fast with good run economy, but your breathing isn't out of control and you feel like you could do it for a super long time, like longer than a marathon, because it's obviously slower than marathon pace. But it was at the end of a 106K week. So my legs were getting a little tired by the end, but I could recover within like a day from it, which was cool. Full fueling during it. So I was doing like 60 to 70 grams of carbs per hour for it. But really solid with it. I'm hoping to be able to run somewhere in the like 350 to 355 per K range for the marathon, which is like 240, 245. sort of somewhere around there. So I feel like I'm trending in the right direction right now in terms of 4:17, and it was a gravel loop with a bunch of turns and stuff like that. The second I was getting on the flat sort of trail that was paved, I was starting to run like 4:05 to 4:10 for the same effort. So I feel like I'm in a good spot there. And what I'm going to do over the next couple weeks is I'm going to start to get into that marathon support into marathon specific phase. And what you're going to see in myself and what I give a lot of my athletes is 4 sort of different key long runs that I like to prep for the marathon. So I have 4 I kind of like to alternate between in the final like 10 to 12 weeks. So while I used to do like easy hilly long runs in the base phase, which was great when I was doing some workouts during the week and sort of building some of that leg strength and the mileage, I'm really getting into, I'm doing almost quality in every single one of my long runs from now until the marathon. And then I do one midweek workout combined with like strides on my easy days. And that way I can hit those 2 quality days with lots of recovery between them, and then still touch up on some speed with the strides, and then lots of aerobic volume on the easy trail days and some double days that I'm doing in there. So first one I love to do, like I just talked about, is a long steady run. So what you usually do on these ones is it's a big continuous block in the middle of the long run at about 90 to 95% of goal marathon pace. So for a lot of people, you want to build this up to be able to do like 15 to even up to, I'm going to try and get something in the 25 to 30K range of a steady long run. So this week I did 21K of that. My next time is going to be in a couple weeks, probably 25K of that steady time. And then I'm going to aim to try and get like a 28 or 30K steady block in. And that's going to be as part of like a 35K run. So I'll probably do 3 or 4K warm up, 30K steady, 1K cool down. And this is, like I said, a great chance to work on sort of that run efficiency, running fast but not hard. You can recover quickly from it. You can practice your marathon stride, your marathon gear, your marathon fueling, that rhythm, and then also practice it on kind of a route that's very similar to race day. So you really get a good practice of marathon psychology. So a cool one to add in if you don't do some of that. People always love to go straight to marathon pace or just easy runs. And I think there's so much value in this steady stuff. You'll see tons of elite marathoners doing this. And this is sort of a classic Renato Canova style type of long run. And I was surprised. It was a good, challenging long run, and I was tired that day. I'd eat a ton of food. I was tired going to bed that night, but then the next day I was like, oh, I could probably run again, which is cool because I got the quality in, but recovered quickly from it. And then that's just going to allow me to hit another quality work and stack a bunch of those weeks. Second one I like to use with athletes is called alternations. So what this is again, a long continuous block of work where you're working above and below marathon pace. So a little bit quicker, little bit slower than marathon pace. So a good example of this might be where you do a 30K run, where you do a 5K warm up, and then you do 20K continuous, where it's like 1K 5 seconds per K faster than marathon pace. So that might be like 8 seconds per mile faster than marathon pace. And then you're doing a float 1K between that at about 10 to 20 seconds slower than marathon pace. So for example, I'll use myself. If my marathon pace is around 4 minutes per kilometer, I'm doing the 1Ks on at around 3:55, and then maybe the 1K floats at 4:15 to 4:20. So cool to like burn a little bit quicker than marathon pace, but teach your body to recover at a fast rate or while running at a fast pace. So great, again, for efficiency and rhythm and teaching yourself to recover at a fast pace. So that would be a continuous block of 20K where it would essentially be like 10 repeats of 1K at 3:55, 1 at 4:15, and trying to do it on a continuous flatter rolling loop while I'm fueling and hydrating during it, so I can practice sort of fueling at a fast rate and using some of those type of items that I'll use in my race, so that when I get to race day, it's nothing new on the system. Third one I like to use is called a progression run. So where you start super easy and you finish strong right around marathon pace, or maybe you might dip a little bit quicker than marathon pace at the end. So this is a great one for training patience, fueling, late race execution. And an example of this one might be something like a 32K run where you do 10K easy. So let's use myself again, 4-minute K marathon pace. So I might do like 10K easy at like 4:45 to 5 minutes a K. Then I might do 10K steady closer to 4:20 to 4:30 per K. And then I might do something like a 10K block where it's like start at marathon pace for the first 6K at like 4 minutes a K, and then maybe I'd chop it down to like 357, 355 for the last couple of K just to like turn it over a little bit at the end. And then I'd probably still finish with like a 2K easy block. So those progression runs are awesome ways to get some good quality work in. Teach your legs to run under fatigue like you're going to at the end of the marathon. But again, you get a quality stimulus, but something you can recover from versus just trying to run 32K at marathon pace. That's going to be so taxing on the body and take you a week to recover that you could be spending on another quality workout a few days later. And then the final one is obviously the OG, which is working at like marathon specific pace. So I like to throw at least kind of 2 of these key workouts in the final, roughly 8 weeks out. And again, they're just in a great spot to work on. In that like 4 to 8 weeks is where we're starting to actually select what our marathon pace is going to be. So I like to go a little bit more off feel with some pace guidance out from that. But I think you can be building fitness so rapidly that you can either like go well beyond the fitness you're aiming for, or maybe you don't quite get to that fitness and you need to race where you're at, not just where you want to be. So I've seen way too many people force marathon paces they're not ready for, or get way fitter and leave time on the table because they're like, get the last 10K and they go, oh, damn it, I could have gone like way faster than this. Where if they just did some of these marathon pace pieces a little bit more off effort, they could get dialed into what they could actually sustain for the marathon. And these are some great workouts that allow you to do it. So some of these I would do them like on a course that's very similar to your race coming up. And it might be something like a 32K run where you do a 5K progressive jog warm up, maybe a couple strides. And then the peak one I like to do is usually like a 4x5K at goal marathon pace with a 1K steady float. So myself, I'd be aiming for like 4x5K around 4 minutes per K, with my 1K steady might be like a 4:20 to 4:30 between. So not getting full recovery, but enough that I don't have to go continuous 20 to 30K of marathon pace and just totally destroy myself. And then I might do a cool down after that. And a preface, I might do a workout before that, might be something like 6x3K at marathon pace, 1K steady. So I'd get 18K of marathon pace work and then progress to that 4x5K or 5x5K as my next one there. So those are 4 marathon pace runs that I'll pretty much like alternate between all 4 of these in my final like 12 weeks leading into the marathon. So might be some ones worth trying in your training if you haven't done them before, but start easy on them. Don't destroy yourself, and progress them over time and blocks when you do them. So hopefully that's been helpful, and we will see you next week. Cheers.